Hey everyone, this is a quick little tutorial about using the character in 3D Max and kind of viewing animations and adding animations if you'd like to make your own. So number one, this is a cat rig that I used for the Sphere Man. So in the hierarchy here, we can see Sphere Man. This is the actual mesh. He has a skin modifier on top of him. Do not get rid of this. Do not collapse it. Otherwise, you will lose all the attachments to the bones, and it's a pain in the butt to set up. So don't convert it to an edible poly or do anything like that. Otherwise, you'll have some extra work to do. If you do want to add or view some animations, you can select his base. Now the base doesn't actually animate, it has no keyframes, nor should it ever, so if you're going to add your own animations, don't add any keyframes on this guy. But this is kind of where all the animations are stored for him. So with him selected, you're going to have to go over to the panel on the right here, select the little moving ball, which is the motion panel, I believe. And over here you'll have a layer manager, and you can see all of his animations in here. By default, he's set to base, which is just nothing. If you double click one of these, you'll get to see his animation. And the arms carry is just a pose, but if you pick up something like jump, you'll get to see his jump there. If you want to see how long an animation is, you can just select all the bones and holding Alt, Control, and right mouse button, you can click and drag to adjust the timeline. So this one's only 20, so you can just watch him do his jump. If we select something like the run, make sure you unclick the old animation, select the new one. We can see the run. And this one's also 20 frames, so it nicely loops. Some animations are longer, some are shorter. I've added some new animations like this punch. So this punch animation I think is a little bit longer. So you'll see here, oh no, this one's also 20. It just doesn't loop as nice. But yeah, I've added a whole bunch. So anyways, that's how you kind of view animations. So if you want to check any out, you just double click on them and you'll activate them. If you'd like to add your own animation, make sure only base is selected, so you start from this nice default pose, and click this ABS button. Click and hold it, and drag down to ABS, hover over that, and let go. This will add a new animation layer. You can call it whatever you like, so whatever. Jump high if you wanted to do like a different jump animation. Once this is selected and you have it highlighted, you can animate on this layer. So by selecting Auto Key, you can, I usually hide this base so I don't accidentally put keyframes on it. You can start animating, so I could put a keyframe on him here, and start moving him around, doing whatever, right? And that way, if you turn this one off and turn a different one on, it will not show your jump high animation, it'll show something else. And that's it. So make sure you're always animating with your keyframe on. If it's not red around the border, you will just be moving your stuff, and it will affect all your animations and severely screw up your file. So make sure you don't try and animate with that off, which everybody has done, and it's an awful experience. His rig is fairly simple. He has bones for his arms. He has 3 bones for his fingers. If you'd like to rotate the fingers, you'll see here my rotation gizmo isn't really aligned with this. Make sure you switch this to local, and that way you'll be able to actually rotate on the proper axis. Fun little trick, if you select all 3 bones and rotate them all together, it'll do a nice bend. He also has 3 bones that control 2 of his fingers on the side here, so you can still do grabs and points and thumbs up and all that kind of stuff. His thumb is the same as well. His body, I'm going to freeze him here just so I don't select them all the time. His body has a rib cage, which controls his upper body. It has a spine, which doesn't really do much. It's just kind of an in-between, between that and the pelvis. So if we select the pelvis here, the pelvis is basically, children on. The pelvis is his base here, so it will affect kind of the same thing there, but you can also move him up and down with the pelvis if you'd like. His feet are a little bit different. They have little box controllers on the bottom here, and what you can do with those is you can just move them around, and it will move all the bones associated with that. Same thing, keep it on local. You can move it around. If you rotate it really high, his foot will start bending, and if you rotate it really down, his foot will bend in half too. If you want to add a toe bend on your own, there is a toe bone If you want to make him do like a sonic foot tap, you can do that. And that's pretty much it. And you can animate the heck out of your dude, add some new stuff. I'll show you how to add the animations into Unity in a different video, and you can go from there. Only other thing you should remember is if you're going to animate something where he is going to translate, so let's say jump, let's take a look at my jump. My jump, he doesn't actually leave the ground very much. He actually just kind of lifts his legs. Now the jump height in the game is different than this. Right? So I'm not actually moving him upwards, because if I move him upwards in the animation and I move him upwards in the code, he is going to go a lot higher than you want, and he's going to leave his character controller. So if you imagine the character controller is the size of the screen here, and it doesn't move because your jump is finished, but he will actually jump out of that character controller and be very confusing for the player. So when we do movement that way, we don't actually add the movement into the animations. Same with the run cycle. His run doesn't actually move forward, he just runs in place, and the movement is done through code. So keep that in mind for all your animations. You can run into some trouble by adding some translation into them if you weren't intending to. The other thing you might want to know is if you like one of the animations here, let's say you like the falling animation, and you like one of the keyframes from here, well, you can just do, while this layer is selected, do an ABS, new animation layer, turn off falling, and this animation will start in this pose. So if you really like that, you can. The other thing you can do too is if you like the, let's say you like the run cycle, for instance, and you're like, yeah, this is pretty good, but you know what? I wish I had a run cycle where his hands didn't move or whatever. So what I can always do is I can make a new layer, but do, which one is it? I believe it's +L, adjustment layer. And what this one will do is allow me to adjust things on top of that animation. So I will still get the run cycle, but I will also be able to animate stuff on top of the run cycle. So it's an adjustment layer. And then when you export, you'll have to have both of these layers selected. Now finally, if you are ready to export, I'm going to export my run animation, let's say. Make sure your keyframe bar here is set to the actual length of the animation. So you know, if my idle is only, this is L20. My idle is 30, so I have to make sure this is set to 30. If you don't like using the click and drag, you can also right-click on the play animation button here and change the length of your animation right here. So make sure this is set to the appropriate length of the animation. I'm going to unhide and unfreeze everything. I don't have to be in animation mode, so I'm going to export my idle. That's the only animation layer I have on. I'm going to go to File and just full out export everything else in there. And right in here, I like to name my stuff sphereman at, and then whatever the jump animation is called. So idle 2, let's say. In here, I'm going to have animation turned on. You can bake animation if you want. We usually use that for complicated things that we do in Max, like if we use a lot of constraints and things like that. This will get rid of all of them and just bake it all into the keyframes. You don't have to do that. You want deformations on. Make sure embed media is not on. You don't need lighting and stuff. It can stay on because it's not in there. It doesn't matter. You do convert deforming dummies to bones and all this stuff, and then hit OK. That'll export, and then you'll get a mesh in Unity, and we'll talk about how to get your animations into Unity in the next video. So thank you.